Welcome to Politically Speaking, a program designed to bring you, our viewers, an inside look into the political arena at the local and state level. I'm Kim Stanley, Vice President of Operations for Cox Roanoke. I'm joined today by my co-host, Tori Williams. Tori, welcome. He is Vice President of Public Policy at the Roanoke Regional Chamber of Commerce. The Virginia General Assembly recently adjourned their annual legislative session. Lawmakers considered thousands of bills and amended the state's biannual budget. This year, our lawmakers also returned to Richmond for a special session on redrawing state House and Senate districts, as well as Virginia's 11 congressional seats. Our first guest today is Delegate Greg Habeeb, who represents the 8th House District covering the City of Salem and part of Roanoke County. Welcome today.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So it was a busy session.
It was a very busy, my first session, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but if it's like this every time, we're going to have a lot of fun.
Good. Well, how steep was the learning curve?
You know, the learning curve, I think, is steep for anybody. I was at a little bit of an advantage because I've been involved in politics behind the scenes for a while, and I've been involved in Richmond for a while, so I knew the process pretty well. But, I mean, anybody who goes into that thinking they know what it's all about is frankly just kind of naive.
Right.
But I think we got our legs under us pretty quickly and had a really good session.
Well, what is the one lesson that you took back that you could use in future sessions?
Well, I think the biggest surprise to me, which I learned, was just the speed at which everything moves.
Right.
And the amount of time or the lack of time that you have to understand some of the issues, to research them. And it's really a job it's a year-round job, and you prepare for the session all year. And I didn't have the advantage of that. You know, our election was the day before session began. I arrived in Richmond about 3 o'clock in the morning and started at 7 o'clock the next morning.
Wow.
So you know, thankfully, I'm not going to be in that situation this next session if the voters return me to Richmond. We'll have more time to prepare, and I think we'll be even able to have a better session than we had this time.
Right. You were drinking from the fire hose.
We were drinking from the fire hose.
That's great.
Can you quickly provide us an overview of some of the key pieces of legislation you carried this session?
Absolutely. You know, again, because I didn't have the advantage of coming in the normal course because of the way I was elected, I didn't obviously have the time to craft quite as broad a legislative agenda as some other folks, and I had bill limitations on me that other folks didn't have. So what I really looked for were a few key pieces of legislation that would sort of meet the philosophy that I had run on, which was streamlining government, making it more efficient, more transparent, not raising taxes, but providing the core services we need. And so we were able to propose a couple of bills that eliminated mandates that have been on the books that cost local governments money that we were able to get rid of, and frankly should have been eliminated years ago and simply hadn't been. I was proud that those were not only passed by both assemblies but were signed by the governor. I carried a bill that was also passed that would streamline the prosecutions for some misdemeanor offenses committed by minors. Again, it saves taxpayers money. It's the type of thing that the average citizen may not see on a daily basis, but where you see it is on the bottom line. And then I looked for key pieces of legislation that I could co-patron that really, again, advanced the agenda that I'd run on and that, you know, the voters accepted in our election, and I was proud to advance some of those policies.
That's great. You were also on the Transportation Committee, correct?
I was.
Yeah, so that was a big win for the governor.
Yeah, the transportation plan was a big deal. Obviously, I've not been a part of the literally decades of battles of trying to propose and pass a transportation plan. But I'm proud of what we accomplished. It isn't a perfect plan. Anytime you take on some additional debt, there's risk involved in it. But it really seemed to be a prudent and thoughtful plan for this period of time with the economy the way it is, with our transportation needs the way they are. And I think we're going to begin to see some pretty quick benefits of the plan.
And it's really not a long-term funding. So do you have any idea at this point where we go long-term?
Yeah, I don't. You know, I said during my campaign that we do need to make the hard choices to identify a long-term stream of revenue for transportation, whether or not that's portioning off an existing stream of revenue or identifying a new one. There's no stomach for a gas tax increase right now, and people have, you know, it's been proposed a few years ago and got no votes on the House floor from either party. So what we need to do is continue to be creative. I think there are some new revenue streams coming online with some new industries coming into Virginia. We've got a growing aerospace industry in Eastern Virginia. We may have this the intermodal facility coming in here in Western Virginia. some industries that have a true nexus to transportation that may be able to create more of that stream of revenue. But what we couldn't do was simply ignore the short-term needs, which has happened for years now. This plan is not a gimmick plan. It's real dollars. It's real new dollars being put right to the needs, and I'm excited to have been a part of it.
Well, I know Southwest Virginia is excited and looking forward to a long-term plan, because we all realize the need, especially in our area.
Right.
So,
right. Well, and you know, you've got transportation means different things to each region of the state, and it's the #1 issue in Hampton Roads for a lot of people. It's the #1 issue in Northern Virginia, and it certainly matters to us as well.
Absolutely.
Another bill that you supported was House Bill 2052, which protects Virginia's right to work laws. I know that bill later failed in the Senate, but why did you think it was important to support that bill? Yeah,
you know, Virginia year in and year out is rated one of the top 1, 2, 3 states in the country to do business. And it's important. I mean, in fact, I saw Governor McDowell on TV this morning. We're competing with every other state in the country, and we're competing with other nations around the world. And the way we do that is by having a business-friendly climate. One of the things that makes us such a business-friendly climate, the reason you see almost daily reports of new jobs coming to Virginia, is our right to work law. We're the most northern state on the eastern seaboard that has the right to work law. And essentially what that means is somebody can't be mandated to join a union in order to have their job. It doesn't forbid unions, it allows them to do what they do, but it doesn't make them mandatory. And so whatever we can do to protect that right to work law, we actually had 2 bills this year. We had a constitutional amendment, which was House Joint Resolution 500, which would have put our right to work statute into our Constitution, which would have made it harder to repeal. It would have just constitutionalized current law. And then the bill that you're referring to, which I was a co-patron of, was a bill that would have preserved the secret ballot portion, essentially the card check legislation we hear about on the federal level, which would remove the secret ballot away from employees so that if a union was proposed, they wouldn't have the right to vote in secret whether or not they wanted that. The secret ballot's fundamental both to our democracy and to our union and business climate. We need to preserve that. It's frustrating when bills like that seem to make so much sense die a somewhat inglorious death in Senate committee. But one of the lessons I've learned in the House is that great successes on one side of the aisle don't necessarily mean they're going to get very far on the other side. And I hope that we'll pick it back up and run with it again.
That's great. Well, we're running out of time, so I really want to jump to redistricting because it's such a big issue, especially in our region. You know, so how do you see your district changing, if so? And then talk a little about any steps that you think could improve the process of redistricting.
Well, my seat, as proposed, the seat that I sit in, the 8th House of Delegates seat, remains in all of Salem, most of Roanoke County, and picks up all of Craig County and part of Montgomery County. I'm excited about that because there's a growing connection between the New River Valley and the Roanoke Valley. I grew up in the New River Valley. I'm looking forward to being part of that growing connection. I do think the process is broken. I ran on a campaign model. In my campaign, I believe that a nonpartisan commission should propose the initial bill, and then the legislators who are held accountable to the citizens ought to tweak it and ultimately draft the final bill, because of the political process plays a role, but it shouldn't be the driving factor in it. So, you know, it's too late in the game this time. I think there's a new citizen awareness of the process and of the importance, and hopefully over the next decade we can head in that direction.
That's great. Thank you so much for being on here. I tell you, I could talk to you all afternoon.
Well, thank you.
It's just good information, and thank you, and best of luck to you with your new position.
Appreciate y'all having me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Coming up after the break, we'll chat with Delegate Bill Cleveland, who had a significant legislative victory in this year's session.